Imagine this. It's 3 a.m. It's cold, dark. You're tired, in fact, completely exhausted. You feel like you're alone and you've been awake all night. Your heart is beating, you're feeling afraid, and you hear a scream. Now, this might sound like something from a ghost story or a scene from a horror movie, but this is in fact me rewinding back to when my little girl was just 2 to 3 months old. And I'm sure lots of you new parents out there and parents can identify that these times can be scary, challenging, tiring. And for me, the thing that got me through these times was not toughing it out on my own or trying to figure it out in isolation, but my phone and WhatsApp and a few simple messages to a close group of friends at 3 a.m., often getting an immediate response. Responses of support and encouragement and sharing the experience. So for me, it's these tiny gestures at the bleakest times that can make the biggest difference. So I'd gone from running a couple of businesses and being completely in control of what I do and when, to suddenly having to relinquish control and being in control of this tiny little infant who was just still learning to live in the world. And to exist, to make this work, to be a mother, I had to ask for help, both financially and emotionally. And the great thing is, this made me stronger and more empowered in the process. So the World Health Organization has quite a scary statistic that states in 2019 that 13% of women across the world, new mums, experience some form of mental disorder, often depression. That is a massive number of women. And therefore, I do believe that it's important that we talk about maternal mental health and bring it out into the open to discuss. It's important that there are communities for new mums and parents to discuss things about motherhood or their careers returning to work, to stop these scary moments from happening and to support them through the challenges that they face. Now, as a mum myself, a mumpreneur, a mum in business, I can, of course, only share my experiences as a woman because I am a woman. I'm sure that many of the things I talk about today will apply to other parents, carers, men and women alike. But perhaps there are just a few things that as mums we take on that are just a little bit extra. We have full-time parenting, caring with primary carers for little ones, a house to run, a career to have, plus also look after ourselves as well. So, let me tell you another story. A couple of years ago, I found myself in a building, a beautiful building in the countryside, and I was with a group of ladies, all very similar to myself. And we were set a challenge of creating a piece of art out of little things we'd collected out in nature on a walk earlier that day. Things like stones, leaves, sticks, flowers. And so we had to work together as a team. And so we had to lay these things down on the floor in front of us, communicate verbally with what would go where, which colours would work together, and basically create an arrangement. And after we'd finished, and we stepped back, and we looked down, I realised we'd created something far more beautiful than we could have created on our own. What we had in fact created was a mandala. It was circular in structure. So what is a mandala? A mandala is a circular design, and it has origins in Buddhist and Hindu cultures. So if you imagine something like a spider's web, it has a central point and then lines fanning outwards. But unlike a spider's web, there's also beautiful patterns and decorations that interconnect and layer on top to make it really, really beautiful. It's often symmetrical, so you can turn it any way round and it's still there. Now, as a creative artist, I love drawing mandalas. They can be simple pencil sketches, they can be black and white and small, they can be made out of things like sticks and stones and flowers that we did that day. Or they can be colourful and beautiful and big and large and elaborate. They reflect life a little bit. So that day, this made me think, this collaboration, this teamwork to create a beautiful piece of art, this circular structure, how can I apply this to my life going forward? And I noticed that other women, successful people, had been using communication in a certain way in this certain structure. So, let's imagine that you are the central point of your mandala. You are the center of your universe. And around this central point, there are a couple of concentric circles, little circles. So for me, my closest circles are my family and friends. Those people who have the very good fortune to know me first thing in the morning before my coffee, and trust me, that is a scary sight. Now, these people can potentially be your biggest champions, pushing you forwards to do greater things than you would think of doing on your own. So how do we get these people on board? It's really important to communicate with them, because obviously if you take on board a new project, you start a new business, even have a new baby, it's going to take time, investment financially, potentially taking this away from your close friends and family. So it's really important to speak to them in a positive manner about what you're embarking on and to get them on board fully. So can you talk to your friends and family more about what you're doing? Or if you are the friend or the family member, how can you support and be the biggest champion for your close friends and family? So let's come back to our mandala. After our close circles, we have our foundation lines, those structural lines fanning outwards. Now, the foundations of anything, the foundations of a building, if you take them away with time, the building is likely to collapse. Same with our mandala. So for me, I see my foundation lines as self-care, an act of compassion directed at yourself. But not a selfish act of compassion, not just in isolation. I'm talking about taking self-care out into a community setting. How does this work? Let's take the example of a yoga practice. So if you do yoga, of course you can roll your mat out at home, get on the mat, engage in your practice, and get wonderful benefits for the mind, the body, and the spirit. But if you take this out into a community setting, go to a group class, what additional benefits do you get? Firstly, there will be a qualified teacher providing you with wisdom, expertise to guide you on your journey and give you further advice and tips. You'll also meet other people interested in yoga, potentially like-minded people who you can discuss this with, discuss other things with. And this is all on top of the initial benefits of the yoga practice itself to begin with. So are there ways that you can take your acts of self-care out into the community and share it and gain even more benefits? So after our foundation lines, we've got our design, our pattern as it starts to build. Now, if I go back to when I opened my first business, I was in my early 20s, and we spent a long time planning the business, getting everything ready for that first day. We designed a logo, we had a name, we had an office, we even had a telephone. It was that good. So on day one, we opened the business, we opened the front door, and we sat and we waited for the phone to ring. So you can imagine the phone didn't ring instantly. It took a little while for this to happen. And so what we did then is we realized that just sitting there, waiting for the phone to ring, sitting on our own in the office just didn't work. What we needed to do was step outwards, step forwards, and step into the community. And so we attended business events, networking mornings, and got to meet people, got to know people. And from those early days in my career, I've met friends for life that have helped me and supported me through my business. So it really is about getting out there and communicating and finding ways of working with other people. And in my current business that I've just set up, I work with somebody very different to me, but we bring different things to the puzzle. We've made a business much greater than I could do alone. And we look to employ people who are other pieces of the puzzle that fit our jigsaw, that make things better. And then the pattern gets more complex. So how has communication sort of stepped forward in the biggest way in the last 10 years? I would say that's the digital revolution. If we take social media as an example, Facebook has a statistic from 2019 that states that 2.23 billion people log onto Facebook every month. That is a huge number of people. I can't even picture that in my mind. These are people liking photos, sharing messages, joining in groups on Facebook, communicating through digital means. So how can we use this to our advantage? Well, for myself, as a mum with a new baby, back a few years ago, if I was sat at home looking after an infant, I couldn't go out to live networking meetings or meet people face to face. So the digital platforms I could engage in, web conferencing and Facebook groups, gave me those opportunities to connect with other people. And we're not just talking locally, we're talking globally. Millions, billions of people. So can you use digital media to your advantage to supercharge whatever it is that you're doing? So back to our mandala. Let's talk about colour. When you add colour to a piece of artwork, it pops, it thrives, it sparkles. So for me in my life, I think of this colour as celebration, celebrating others and yourself. You know, when was the last time you said to somebody, well done? Or just simply, you are awesome. And when did you last say it to yourself? Congratulate yourself on the achievements you've done. And of course, there are other ways to put forward celebration. You could nominate people for awards. So how can you celebrate others and yourself? And then we come to the final pieces of our mandala, the tiny little details on the edges. And for me, this is how we pay it forwards and outwards to others. How can you pay it forwards? Perhaps you simply invite somebody out for a coffee and a chat and share your expertise and your wisdom in a particular subject. Or perhaps you become a formal mentor or a coach for somebody, or financially invest in their business. There are so many ways that you can pay it forward. Can you think of just one or two? And so our mandala is complete. We have all of these levels from the very center to the tiny details on the edges, all of it interconnected and working together. So as a mumpreneur, a mum in business myself, I feel that I've shaped my life, my universe, to be like a connected and complete mandala. I have gone from those scary 3 a.m. wake-ups where I feel alone and scared with my heart racing to stepping out and connecting and communicating with as many people in as many ways as possible. So what I urge you to do is to send supportive texts at 3 a.m. to those people that need it, to invite people out for a coffee and a chat to share your wisdom, to support your friends and family, to look at new digital ways of supercharging your business, and to shine your light out and forwards, and to say, Namaste. Thank you.